How's it going, everybody out there? My name is Chad. With me is Leonard. This is the Nitty Gritty. We are going to talk pro wrestling with you today, and we are going to talk about wrestling rings and wrestling ramps. And although that might not sound very fascinating on the surface, we are going to be talking about some of the different rings throughout history here and some of the different ramps that we might have seen and what we prefer. So let's get started with WWE and AEW. They use like a 20 by 20 ring, and historically WCW and ECW used more of a 18 by 18. So Leonard, my first question for you is, do you remember those rings being a little bit smaller to the eye, or did you not notice?
No, as a fan watching at home, I don't think I noticed for two main reasons. One, I think it would probably be hard to tell on television, just the way it's shot. And two, I don't think it really affected matches. I don't think that guys were doing anything different or were working a match any different based on that ring size. I'm sure if you would talk to guys, they would tell you, oh yeah, there's a difference between 20 by 20 and 18 by 18 and how we would move or what we would do. I didn't really notice anything. But while we're here, I do want to make the point that I think rings are like a lot of the other stuff we've talked about, like referees. You don't notice the good ones, you notice the bad ones.
Right.
And I don't think this is a story I told when we did our live show episode about live shows we've been to, that I went to visit a friend of mine in Boston a few years ago. And he asked me, hey, what would you like to do? And I said, hey, let's go to an indie show. So we found one. And John Cena's dad was actually working as a manager. But the ring was very dingy in color. The apron was sagging, the ropes were sagging, it was sitting flat on the ground. And this one guy had a valet who was like 6'3", 6'4". She was huge. And she was standing on the floor and her head was above the top rope. And it looked just
That's
terrible.
bad.
And thinking about this today as I was preparing for this show, I remembered that I don't think anybody did anything off the top turnbuckle. And it was probably because the ring was so bad. So
They were probably afraid to.
yeah. So I think that's what I would say here. I think that difference in size probably doesn't matter. It would be the condition of the ring. And any of these top companies are going to have rings in good shape.
Right. Well, I never really thought about the WWE ring being bigger, but I do feel like now I full disclosure, I did not watch a lot of ECW, but I do feel like I remember the WCW ring looking a bit smaller at times, based on the fact that they weren't able to, it seemed to move as quickly or as freely maybe in that ring. I don't know. Maybe it's just, it was an unconscious thing. But that one did strike me to be somewhat smaller. Anywho, the standard ring, I think I could probably speak for Leonard. We both prefer the standard four-corner wrestling ring instead of maybe the next ring we're talking about, which is the six-sided ring that TNA used. Now, a lot of people didn't like it. On Eric Bischoff's podcast with Conrad Thompson, 83 Weeks, he talked about how he hated it when he and Hogan joined the promotion, because it was, according to him and according to him talking to TNA management, it was just them being different for the sake of being different. There was no actual reason behind it, similar to the X Division, according to Eric Bischoff, which he asked many times, what is the X Division? And he never got a straight answer. So even though it was just being different for the sake of being different, I liked it. I think I wish they would have stuck with it. The fact that they were able to be so easily swayed with, now we're going to get rid of it because Hogan and Bischoff are here. I think they could have stuck with it. I think that there's so much about that ring that wasn't explored. You could have been really inventive with it. Now, I know that based on what I've heard from interviews and stuff, I don't think it was any talent's favorite to work with, but Leonard and I, not being pro wrestlers, we don't know that. But Leonard, what do you think about the six-sided ring? Did you hate it? Did you like it? Or were you indifferent?
I think it was one of those you don't know what you got till it's gone type of things. Because I do remember a lot of fans online and such saying, "Oh, it's weird. I don't like it," and then they got rid of it, and then people were like, "Oh, why'd you get rid of it?"
Right.
Because it is so, I think, iconic to TNA, and being different for the sake of being different isn't necessarily a bad thing. Because I think back then, especially if you would go to any wrestling fan, you say, "Tell me something about TNA." They got a six-sided ring. That'd be the first thing they would say. Tell
Right.
me something else. They got this thing called the X Division. And so those are two things that really help to set them apart. And I do think that if you do watch some of those X Division matches, which I always consider just to be like the cruiserweight division,
Yeah.
that a lot of those guys, especially multi-man matches, would use that six sides and how they could come off differently and do different things a little bit in that. So I did like the six-sided ring for the uniqueness of it, and I think it very much was of TNA. If WWE would switch to a six-sided ring, I would be like, why are they doing that?
Right.
But for a promotion that was trying to get themselves figured out and was trying to set themselves apart, yeah, doing the six-sided ring I think was a good idea, and I think for them it worked and it was fun. And again, don't know what guys who actually worked in it would have thought of working in it. Again, everything we're talking about tonight is basically as fans having seen the rings, not necessarily
Right.
worked in any of these rings. But that's the perspective we're coming from. And yeah, I thought the six-sided ring was cool and something they should have stuck with.
Yeah. No. Yeah. And Eric Bischoff talked a lot about when he started out as well, not when he started out, but when he was running WCW, he wanted to do everything differently than what WWF was doing at the time. And this six-sided ring and the X Division, if they had a clear-cut definition of what the X Division was, because there were times when it got away from that cruiserweight style. But I liked the Ultimate X match. I thought that was a really cool match to watch. There's so many classic TNA matches that are Ultimate X, if anybody wants to go check them out. But the six-sided ring, I think, was a really cool thing to say, hey, we're doing this differently than WWE, and we like it that way. And I think you're exactly right when you say they were an up-and-coming promotion. They were trying to get more traction, and had they just stuck with, hey, we're going to do our own thing over here, and this is how we're going to present it to you, I think it could have worked if they had stuck with it and said, you know what, anybody coming in, if you don't like it, you don't have to be here, but this is what we're going to do. But they seem to so easily be swayed by not just Hogan or Bischoff, but like they seem to be so reliant on getting ex WWE talent and kind of molding their promotion according to whoever they just got in, that they never were able to really have firm footing on the ground. But I do think that if they had stuck with it like you, that it would have been cool. But taking a little shift here. So, Leonard, what do you think about the WWE style of rings as far as adding the LED boards to the sides and the LED lights to the outside of the posts? Do you, when you see that, are you kind of I'll just say really quickly, I'm kind of indifferent to it. I notice it. I think it's cool on the surface. I don't know necessarily. I don't think it adds anything, but I much prefer old school, which I'll probably say again here. But what do you think when you notice that stuff?
Again, I don't really notice it much or give much thought to it. It's just something there. Every now and again that it does play into a match, like maybe someone will get slammed into it. Like I'm remembering, I think, an episode of Raw where like someone got slammed into it and like it went out, like that type of thing. But they don't really use it much. It's just kind of there. And if anything, I think it just speaks to production value. It just speaks to the money that WWE has,
Right.
the money they invest in their production value. And again, I think that's what it says. It looks like money, and that's what I think they're going for with a lot of what they're doing in production value. They want to look as top flight as they can, and something like that just does that.
Absolutely. No, that's very true. And in Japan, the way they present their turnbuckles is they make it look, in a lot of ways, they make it look like a boxing ring, in that they have the one solid turnbuckle, or the one solid pad rather, going down over all three turnbuckles. Do you think they should not have that, or do you think hey, it's their thing, this is the way they do it, or do you think like this should be more of a boxing thing? Why do they have it that way?
No, it's kind of like what we were talking about with the six-sided ring. It is unique to them. It is part of their character and their feel. I don't watch a lot of Japanese wrestling, but what I've had, it feels to me like they are still more on the sports side of sports
Yes.
entertainment, while America's more on the entertainment side of sports entertainment. And I think part of that feel, part of that vibe is the fact that they have a more of a boxing style ring than a wrestling style ring, that it makes it feels more sporty. Again, there's a few spots that you can't do. You can't do the spot where you like slam the guy's head into the top turnbuckle pad and the middle and then the bottom and
Right.
things of that nature. But again, that's
they don't
not,
do that anyway.
they don't, yeah, it's not their style anyway over there. So I think, again, it's something that's unique to them. It's something unique to Japanese wrestling. It's something where if I would just be kind of randomly flipping through things and I would see something like that, I go, oh, this is probably something from Japan. So yeah, again, unique to them. They should definitely stick with it and keep using that if that's what they like.
Yeah, and we've always heard over the years that Japanese fans view it as like a legitimate sport. And one of these days, I would love to ask actual Japanese fans if that is indeed how they view it. Because they are obviously a different crowd. And I don't watch Japanese wrestling all the time, but a few times a year I will check into some of the content and some of the matches that get a lot of buzz. And they it's really great stuff. And certainly their matches are much more stiff and much more sport/athletic based. But yeah, it's definitely their own thing. Very cool.
While we're here, and it's kind of ring related, is I know the Japanese fans do the streamer thing where they throw the streamers into the ring.
Yeah.
And I've been to some different indie shows where people have done that, and I think it loses something in translation because it's like, hey, that dude did a hammerlock, and they just start throwing the streamers. Like you don't understand. That's like, it's for a guy's retirement match, or it's for when he's been chasing the belt for a year and he finally wins in the blow off. It's not just because that's a cool hammerlock and you throw it. So, any message to American fans, don't do that.
Right. So, obviously, in addition to the regular ring and the six-sided ring, there are plenty of matches that happen not in the wrestling ring at all. And so we're going to give our thoughts on this as a whole here. So you have Falls Count Anywhere matches, which obviously the match could end at any place. There was one match in the Hart Dungeon at one point between Owen Hart and Ken Shamrock. There's boiler room brawls. There's backlot/parking lot brawls. There was a King of the Road match at Uncensored between Dustin Rhodes and Blacktop Bully. There are hardcore matches or 24/7 matches, which obviously can happen anywhere. And another match that I had was the Final Deletion match, which was pretty much a movie. I don't even know if I would call that a match, but it was something. And it happened somewhat in the ring, but it happened a lot outside the ring as well.
Well, any of those movie style, I'll call them movie style matches. So like the Firefly Funhouse thing from WrestleMania this year and the Boneyard match from WrestleMania this year fall underneath that.
Right.
And then one other one I would just mention, sort of a subset of the Falls Count Anywhere match, is the Empty Arena match.
Yeah.
So same concept, just no fans. And then in those matches, you usually see them going into the crowd and using the empty chairs and going into the concourse area, and a little bit different than.
Yeah, and the one with The Rock and Mankind ended outside of the ring, but the one with Jerry Lawler and Terry Funk ended inside the ring. It was an empty arena, but the match just kind of ended when Terry Funk injured his eye. But empty arena matches, I love empty arena matches if done right. It seems weird to say that now that we're in the middle of a pandemic, and so many matches are empty arena matches. But when the feud is so heated that they do a match like that where these guys, they don't want crowds, they don't care, they're just so angry at each other, I think it can be really cool when they do that every once in a blue moon. But I like matches that are outside of the ring if used sparingly. I love Falls Count Anywhere matches in theory. The only issue is there's so much drama with the count, the 1, 2, 3 count, and like the referee's hand hitting the mat, and you can hear it, and the crowd gets into it. Sometimes, not all, it doesn't always happen that way when you have a Falls Count Anywhere match. If it's on cement, then you just kind of have to barely hear the referee make his count, or you have to hear the referee say 1, 2, 3. That's happened a lot of times too. So when you see matches like this where they end somewhere in the building or they're in the parking lot, what do you like these type of matches like I do? Like, if you sparingly, or do you wish they would use them more often?
No. I think all these matches that are outside the ring are about exploring the space. It allows you to do different spots. It allows you to use different props, tell a different type of story. Some of those, we've mentioned with the empty arena matches. I've mentioned before how I've done some fantasy wrestling and have written matches, and I've written empty arena matches and Falls Count Anywhere matches. And I always like to work in a spot where a guy is like jumping off a pop machine. I don't know why. That's just a cool visual in my head of like a guy ambushing someone in a hallway, jumping off of, or a soda machine, depending on where you're at in the world.
On a related note, we didn't mention the concession stand brawl.
Oh, yeah.
The Tupelo concession stand brawl. I'm not going to remember all the participants. I know before he was Honky Tonk Man, I know it was Wayne Ferris. I know Jerry Lawler. Mm-hmm. And we will put the names up here.
Yes.
That wasn't even a match, actually. I just watched that recently, so I should remember who they all are. But it's not even a match. Like, the match occurred, and then they just kind of kept fighting in the concession stands. But it is incredible to watch. It's only like a 9-minute clip if you guys find it online. Yeah. But concession stand brawls should be used more often, certainly.
Yeah, and again, I'm just not for doing a match like this just to do it, as you said. Something like the Heart Dungeon match, that only worked because there was a storyline reason, there was a character reason. You're not going to send 2 luchadors up to the Heart Dungeon. It has to be somebody.
Now I want to see that.
I want to see that. It has to be someone part of the Hart family or somehow connected to maybe Stampede or Canadian wrestling to make
Mysterio
that work.
and Juventud in the Heart Dungeon.
In the Heart Dungeon, just because. And I know there's a lot of other matches that we didn't mention that do not have a ring. We were just giving.
The supermarket brawl between Austin and Booker T.
And again, not a match. That was just like a segment. Right. It was just like a fight, and it was cool. It was fun. I don't think Booker T won looking good coming out of it.
Probably not.
But I think anything like, again, any gimmick match should probably be used sparingly, and definitely something without a ring allows for unique storytelling opportunities. But you have to have the storyline reason, and you have to have the character dynamic.
The story is the most important part.
Yeah.
And kind of going on a little bit of a tangent with the whole 24/7 thing. I'm kind of torn with, like, the hardcore division kind of became really hokey after a while. Mm-hmm. I thought it was fun for what it was. I always, when I go back and I watch events, before I listen to podcasts, I always enjoy watching those hardcore matches because they are a fun little diversion. As far as the 24/7 thing goes, it's like the hardcore division without the hardcore part of it. So if you said it to somebody like that, they'd be like, well, why do I care? So, it's really cool because, R-Truth, he has amazing comic timing. Mm-hmm. He has been around forever, and he manages to stay relevant and interesting. But, like, I don't know. I'm kind of torn. It's like it's a title just for comedic purposes, mm-hmm. And anybody associated with it, immediately their stock goes down.
Yeah, if they become a joke, they become a comedy character,
right?
And again, going back to me having done like fantasy wrestling a couple of times in these ones where you draft people and you make cards, I've tried to do comedy federations, comedy leagues, and those don't go anywhere. Nobody ever votes for those shows. They will say, "Oh, well, that's funny," or "That sounds, bizarre," but put against someone doing like a legit league, I never get any votes. I never win that. So,
well, so we're going to shift away from rings, and we're just going to talk briefly here about different ring aprons. So, obviously, you have the old school WWF type of apron where they just kind of came out of the locker room and they just kind of walked down the aisle. You have the WCW entrance from the mid 90s, which was basically a long, not even a rampway, it was just a long platform that went directly to the ring level. And now you have the way WWE has done it for years, which is they come out with the Titantron behind them. They kind of go down a ramp to the ring, and they've stuck with that for a long time. Obviously, the Titantron and the effects they use when the people come out of the gorilla position there has become more advanced as time goes along, but it's pretty much the same style. They come out on the stage and then they go down to the ring. And AEW uses something similar to what WCW used. They come out, they go down a few stairs, but then they have that platform that goes right to the ring. And I really like that, actually. If for no other reason than I think it sets it apart from what WWE is doing. I think that it's cool to put the talent really more in the spotlight like that. But I always liked watching those WCW events for that reason. I think that you can add that platform to the matches in a really cool way, and it's pretty neat. But at the same time, I do have a little bit of nostalgia for the old WWF way of entering, where they just kind of come out of the locker room and they walk down the aisle. Being that the Undertaker is approaching his 30 years in the as the character here soon, I was watching his debut where he just kind of came out of the back, and like being such a towering figure, it was such a great debut. But what do you think, Leonard? Do you have any opinion as far as any way people enter, or do you have a favorite?
Well, I do really like the WCW raised platform that was flush with the ring, because I think a lot of those guys, the inventive guys, would use it.
Yep.
Go back and you watch Sting versus Cactus Jack.
Great
Falls
match,
count
yep.
anywhere in North America, and I always loved that it was falls count anywhere in North America. Like they're going to get on a Greyhound bus and start fighting to Utah or something. But if you watch that, there's a lot of spots that use that ramp, and a lot of what you would call your cruiserweight dudes or technical dudes back then for WCW would use it. So I do like that. I think what WWF does now with the intro stage and the ramp, I think that's classic. Again, I think that's them showing their production values, big screen, and trying to give every entrance an epic feel when people come out. So I think that's part of that. I don't know if we're going to get into it next, but more than just entrance waves and such, I think about sets and specific sets. You mentioned the Titantron, how iconic that is for Raw. Of course, SmackDown had the big fist for a lot of years, and people remember that. And I always wanted somebody to like get on the fist and jump off of it, which I don't think ever happened.
I miss the themed sets.
Yeah,
I really do. The theme sets were really cool, and I know that probably was time consuming and expensive for them.
Right.
But I really thought that was cool. Looking back on that, there was that one event, and I forget what the event itself was called, but it was a handicap ladder match between Vince McMahon and Shane McMahon versus Steve Austin, and the entire entranceway was all constructed with ladders.
Yeah.
And it was really cool. Like, I really liked that. And the In Your House set. What NXT is doing with bringing back these old events, whether it be In Your House or even recently Halloween Havoc, is to me really cool. It makes it really watchable because they're changing things up. They're doing different things. It's not just the standard routine every single time out of the gate. So I really do miss those theme sets. But yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I want to say I had In Your House and Halloween Havoc on my list of theme sets. Two we didn't talk about was King of the Ring 2001, because that is where Kurt Angle threw Shane McMahon through the glass that had the logo on it. So that's iconic for that, how the set played into the match with going through those.
You'll never see anything like that again.
Yeah, another one I thought was really cool was SummerSlam 2008, which was a big theater marquee. And they would come out like they were walking out of the theater with their names on the marquee above it. And that was super cool. And I think, I don't know if this is the next thing you're going to talk about, but I'm going to throw this in here now, is the ring carts that WWE used for a couple of WrestleManias, particularly WrestleMania 3, because almost as iconic as the image of Hogan slamming Andre is the image of afterwards Andre and Heenan in the cart riding off, with Andre kind of pointing and Heenan doing this. I don't know what I need to do to beat this guy. I don't know what I need to do. And I still claim that one of the best feuds all time was Hogan versus Heenan, not Hogan versus anybody else.
Absolutely.
Heenan actually wins that feud because Hogan turns heel. And a lot of people said that Heenan ruined the reveal. No, because
I don't think so.
Hulk Hogan was a lion cheating snake in the grass, mofo. He always said that.
That was Heenan being Heenan.
That was Heenan being Heenan.
So that's a very divisive point, even to this day. A lot of people, I didn't even, truthfully, when you barely notice it unless you're actually really trying to look for it and listen to it. But it was just Heenan being Heenan. And I think they should use the cards more often, because you look back at some of these WrestleManias and they have a long way to go before they get to that ring. And I do think at some point the drama is taken away just a little bit. Like the hype kind of goes down just a little bit when they have to walk like 2 football fields to get to where they need to go. But
well, you know the story about WrestleMania 8, and again, this is just a story I heard, which I don't know if it's 100% true, was the fact it was in Indianapolis and that huge dome where the Colts played, and the match, it was Sid Vicious versus Hulk Hogan was the main event, and Ultimate Warrior was supposed to do it was Papa Shango was supposed to do the run-in, I think.
Right.
And he got lost because the place was so huge that he got lost trying to get to the ring. And there's actually, I believe, a shot of him kind of out there, and Gorilla might say something about Papa Shango, where's he going, or what happened. So
I have to watch that again. I don't remember that.
Yes, he got. I hope I'm not misspeaking. I very much remember him getting lost trying to get to the ring.
That's amazing
because the place was so big. So yeah, definitely for bigger ones, I think. And again, maybe while we're here, to mention too that a lot of times, especially at WrestleManias, you've got where people come out on motorcycles or in cars or different types of transportation, not so much the ring cart. And a lot of times it's transportation specific to them. But again, the ring carts, I'm surprised they haven't brought those back like an old school Raw or something kind of retro. Maybe someone with WWE will see this and say, hey, bring those back. I think those motorized carts were they're just a cool idea. And again, they're just part of nostalgia.
Yeah, and it seems that Triple H is one of the people that likes to bring that old school stuff back. I know early on he was really pulling for War Games, and it took a long time before War Games made an appearance, and eventually it did in NXT. So it seems that, and they were talking on the podcast that I listened to, Conrad Thompson's podcasts, about how Halloween Havoc, Eric Bischoff looked at that as the marquee event for WCW, whereas most people would think it would be a Starrcade, but he viewed Halloween Havoc as their big event, and until recently it wasn't used in WWE. So it's cool to see that stuff come back, because there is so much you can do with it. But talking about some of these matches that don't occur in the rings and the ring carts and the big domes, we should touch on wrestling outside in general. And I personally have never been a huge fan of wrestling events that take place outside. I understand from a business perspective why WWE puts WrestleMania in stadiums and domes. I totally get it. I just think as a fan watching at home, when you can't hear the roar of the crowd all the time, I think it takes away from the match. And I think it really sometimes it makes the event look awkward, despite all the fireworks and the lights. I've just never been a huge fan, unless there are exceptions where you think about Goldberg beating Hogan, or Daniel Bryan at WrestleMania 30, or matches where the crowd is unanimously on their feet and roaring. those are great moments, no doubt. But by and large, I've never been a huge fan of events that take place outside, because I think hearing the crowd inside, and certainly as we know recently, the crowd is such an important part to any wrestling event. Having the crowd be such a big part of the event to me is really important. But Leonard, what do you think? Wrestling outside?
Well, I think the opposite to what you said is the Road Wild or Hog Wild shows that WCW used to do up in Sturgis for the bike rallies, because those guys would be revving their bikes so loud that you couldn't hear anything at
Yeah,
all
it's weird.
going on.
It's
So
weird.
those were very weird shows, considering they were doing these shows just because Eric Bischoff wanted to hang out with bikers, and they weren't necessarily wrestling fans, and you got some weird matches and weird outcomes. But one thing I do like outdoor shows is when the ring is in a weird position, like the spring break shows that WCW used to do,
Oh yeah.
and with where the ring was in the middle of a swimming pool. And AEW did this on the Chris Jericho cruise, where it was in the middle of a swimming pool on the ship, and somebody's going into the water.
Or
And
the opening Nitro, which was in a Mall of America.
yeah, that was, and I know what Shotgun Saturday Night did a show from some I don't remember exactly where it was, but it was somewhere in New York. It was a building, and they wound up fighting on an escalator and different things like that. But I sent Chad a video earlier today from MTV from 1999 called Snow Brawl, where they were at a ski resort, and the commentary team was Larry Zbyszko, Jimmy Hart, Rob Zombie, and Stuttering John from the Howard Stern show.
How they came up with that lineup is beyond me. Like, you sent this to me, and it's such a weird, I had never seen it. It's such a weird thing, because music is playing the entire time, and the lineup
of girls are dancing in the background.
Yeah, the lineup of talent is so odd. It was very bizarre.
Yeah, so it's a battle royal underneath like a canopy pavilion type of thing, and Brian Adams winds up winning, and Disco Inferno is pelted with snowballs at the end of it. So there's the snow gets involved. So it's weird. But yeah, outdoor shows, I don't really mind them so much. I think they do speak to an epicness, if you're going to do something outside. Again, something like the Snow Brawl we watch now, it's so laughable. But something like a WrestleMania at a huge outdoor arena, and especially the way they usually have those set up with the sets and stuff, look cool. So I don't really necessarily have a problem with outdoor shows. I think a problem there is controlling the weather.
Right.
I was going to an indie show once where they were going to have it outside, and rain moved in, and they wound up moving it inside to the building. It was I think it was an American Legion Hall. But I mentioned that story in our live show episode because that's when I met Bobby Eaton, and I hung out with Bobby Eaton. But that was initially supposed to be an outside show. I don't think I've ever attended an outside show. Again, most indie places don't do that.
Well, the WrestleMania that I attended was outside, and for the first part of it, it was sprinkling, and I was way up, not in the nosebleeds, but pretty close. And it was not great that it was raining. I was just happy to be at WrestleMania, so I kind of didn't worry about it too much. But to your point about the weather, you have to rely on it being nice to go to an event outside, and if it's not, it does dampen your experience a little bit. But
there is I don't remember now what the show was for, but there is a WCW match. It's high voltage, and I want to say the Nasty Boys. It's a tag team match outside for something, and a torrential downpour hits, and they are trying to work a match while falling all over the place because the ring is soaked.
I'm gonna find that.
Yeah, find that. I'm pretty sure it's available on YouTube. I just don't remember what the show was, but I believe it was High Voltage versus the Nasty Boys.
All right.
Last anecdote I have here is I know I've talked about me and my friend Dan going to indie shows and meeting some of the guys, getting to know some of the guys. And a few years ago, a guy we knew who's a promoter and a wrestler was looking to sell his company, and he offered it to me and Dan for $10,000.
Oh, wow.
We did not have $10,000. and it was lock, stock, and barrel. It was all his names and trademarks and his contact lists and his AV equipment and his guardrails and the ring and the trailer to carry the ring around. And we had guys we knew, wrestlers that we knew, told us, hey, if you buy this, you will make your money back in a couple months just renting the ring out.
Right.
Because rings are, and then Dan started to price rings, and just the ring itself would be about 10 grand. And this was a pretty new, really nice ring. And I know I've mentioned Bobby Fulton working in Ohio, having a promotion. And what I was told about him, that when he came back to Ohio from working on the national level, he invested in a ring. He owned his own ring. And along with running his own shows, he would rent those rings out to other promoters who did not have a ring, because not only is buying a ring expensive, but maintaining it and transporting it and setting it up.
Absolutely.
So he would run a package deal. Rent my ring, I'll bring it, I'll set it up, I'll take care of it, and I'll wrestle on your card. So it was like a one package deal with Bobby Fulton. From what I was been told about him, but from things I've seen, I would say that's probably accurate. So
one shot deal, like our
one shot deal. So package deal, I should say. So advice to any wrestlers out there: buy your own ring.
Imagine if you had gotten a loan and gotten that ring.
Oh, he was thinking about it. I was more realistic, and he was thinking. I was like, "Do you think any bank in the world would give us a loan to buy a wrestling promotion?"
They'd be like, "So, what do you need this for? A wrestling ring? Why?" Because
we want it.
Yeah.
Because we think it would be cool.
Yeah.
And it would be cool. And again, if we ran our own promotion, I think that is a lot stickier of a headache than just renting the ring out.
Yeah.
So again, that's an anecdote about I almost owned a wrestling promotion if it wasn't for the need of cash.
All right. Well, while Leonard thinks of his promotion name, we are going to wrap up this episode about rings and ramps and wrestling outside. We thank you for joining us. For Leonard and Hayhurst Championship Wrestling, my name is Chad, and we will see you next week.